All right, we're back. Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Ryan Grace, and with me today, of course, Dan Cecilia, and special guest, Stephen Mackintosh from Mill City Ventures. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. We're excited to talk to you. Certainly given everything that's going on in the market with a lot of treasury companies being spun up. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself as well as the inception of Mill City Ventures, and then we'll get into all the details here as to what you guys are doing and kind of what you're seeing in the marketplace.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stephen Mackintosh, co-founder of Heritage, which is a proprietary hedge fund. We invest in deep tech and crypto. We've been investing in the space for a number of years. We originally got connected with Gavin and Vitalik when they were at Ethereum in 2016. We were early investors in the Polkadot ecosystem, in the Solana ecosystem, right the way through to Sui, Mist Labs, and most recently payments-focused blockchains like Plasma in conjunction with Tether. And we've really invested across the stack from the consumer level, like Pump.Phone, right through to fully homomorphic encryption, right through to security companies, right through to centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, and everything you can kind of imagine. We've also been very, I think, strong backers of early stage managers in the crypto industry. We've backed about 16 different hedge funds and VC funds, often anchoring them to get them to explore new kind of verticals, whether it's DeFi, gaming, security. So we've got a really broad portfolio. We've seen everything crypto has to offer over the years. And yeah, we've been a prolific investor in the Sui ecosystem. Delighted to have joined that team at the beginning of their journey and have invested in a number of companies that have come out of that ecosystem over the past few years, from DeepBook to Walrus to DoubleUp to Shio, SuiLend, and many others we can talk about in the show. But we think this is a generational opportunity. We think it's the most important blockchain to custody in a public treasury strategy, and I'd love to get into what makes Sui unique on this show today.
Yeah, well, I guess let's just jump right in and start there. Mill City Ventures, ticker symbol is MCVT, VT or TV? Sorry, VT. Apologies. Okay. You've recently spun this up, right? And there's $450 million in the treasury company. You've been in the space for a while. What is it about Sui that has your attention?
So I think it's good to go back to the beginning of where this company came from. This is the team that was hand-selected by Mark Zuckerberg to build the Libra and Diem crypto projects. And as you can see in the recent press around the war for AI talent, Zuckerberg hires the best, he pays the most, and he's very competitive when it comes to world-class talent. And he hand-chose these individuals. The 5 founders that are at Mist Labs are the highest intellectual capital in crypto. And it's important to stress that when Zuckerberg kind of started those initiatives, he was looking to roll this out to 3 billion users at the time. And I think that's a really important starting point. And had that company been allowed to succeed in their crypto project, which was prevented by the previous administration and SEC regime, that could have probably been the biggest business in crypto, bigger than Tether, bigger than Coinbase. I think that's highly likely given the distribution and the intellectual capital that came out of that team. Whilst they were there, Sam Blackshear invented Move, the only smart contract focused programming language that's designed for crypto that has security by design. The Move kind of based programming language is super unique, this object-oriented data model that allows for a lot of unique programmability. The consensus mechanisms that are placed in Sui, from Narwhal now to Mr. SETI, allows for incredibly fast finality on the network. And it is a truly universal coordination layer for the internet of the future. If we think about the types of experiences that have been we've been so accustomed to in Web 2, social media, gaming, they have been prevented from flourishing in Web 3 because of the underlying infrastructure. And Sui is designed to solve that. It's designed to onboard the next billion users. And we think it's not a question of if, but when a breakout use case emerges in the next couple of months or the next year, which will have hundreds of millions of users. And if we think about what the future represents in terms of these huge driving technology forces, in AI, and stablecoins, you need a network that can handle trillions of dollars of payments flow. And you also need a network that can handle agentic actions that are probably emitting billions of events at the same time concurrently. And I think it's been proven through the statistics that are coming out of SUI at the moment that it's got all-time transaction volume. On the network. It's got incredibly high number of users joining the network. It's got a really huge growth in TVL. And in the past year, I think according to the latest Electric Developer Capital report, it had the fastest growth in developers of any ecosystem. So you can see that all the numbers are pointing in the right direction. SUI is only 2.5 years old on mainnet, but the velocity of growth of this ecosystem has been extreme. And I think we as investors at Caritage have underwritten that growth from the very beginning. I think what's come out of the SUI ecosystem has been profound. They've got programmable storage in Walrus. They've got this really important center of liquidity in DeepBook, which is kind of the on-chain NASDAQ that underpins many things together on SUI. They have now these incredible acquisition and onboarding technologies from ZK login to passkeys that came out in the past few weeks, which allows anyone to create a wallet seamlessly using biometrics or using Google single sign-on. These are the types of enabling capabilities that will allow breakout use cases to emerge in SUI in the next year or so.
What do you think some of those potential use cases are? Is this more DeFi oriented? Is it gaming? You've mentioned AI and agents. Kind of how do you see this playing out?
I think it's all of the above. I think what's great about SUI is it is a universal coordination layer, and the types of experiences that require hundreds of millions of users, billions and trillions of transactions, they can only really be enabled by SUI. And I think that many analysts and many technology commentators and reporters have kind of come to that conclusion recently. I think the consensus algorithm is novel and unique and has been proven to have this very specific kind of fast path consensus mechanism, which allows for really fast finality and high throughput. Similarly, the very kind of essence of the move-based programming language allows for programmable transaction blocks. It allows for inherent concurrent scalability, so you can handle transactions simultaneously and not be prevented from dealing with sequential transaction ordering that you see on an account-based model that's typical with Ethereum and Solana. So I think SUI is a very important and new technology paradigm that will enable hopefully use cases we've never seen before. I think what you mentioned, payments, DeFi, gaming, sure, agentic experiences, they all, I think, will flourish on SUI. And just for everyone's kind of benefit, I used to be in the AI industry, previously was chief commercial officer of a company that was started in the UCL AI Research Lab alongside DeepMind, and we ultimately exited that business to a New York Stock Exchange listed acquirer. I'm very familiar with the event workload that is emitted when individuals or kind of businesses make requests on these ML infrastructures. The types of transactions that are coming through, the scale of that is so significant, and you can see that in a lot of the reporting around how much GPU, how much compute is required to scale AI every 6 months, every year. It's just growing exponentially, and you need a network that can handle that throughput. And right now, I think SUI is totally unique as a technology in being future-proof. One last comment is that there's a huge existential threat to crypto networks in the form of quantum computing. And if you look at the research that came out of SUI recently from the chief cryptographer, Kostas, who incidentally was the head of cryptography for WhatsApp, for Instagram, which had billions of users. He's just released some really groundbreaking research on post-quantum security in EDDSA chains. And you can see that SUI is really building for the future. So that's how I would answer your question. It's set for every type of use case, and it doesn't necessarily have to be pigeonholed into one certain sector.
Awesome. So, I mean, you guys are obviously making over at Mill City Ventures a considerable investment in this space. I'm curious to kind of learn a little bit more about the strategy. But before we jump into that, I mean, this is clearly a trend here. We've seen this support a lot of different assets, and what I mean by this is the treasury companies that have been spun up. We've seen those for Bitcoin, obviously, with probably Strategy being the first and most well-known. We've seen this with Ethereum. I've seen a couple others mentioned with BitTensor, purchasing Tau, Sui. What is it about the treasury companies that is attractive to investors? What's the reason for those?
I think that we are at a tipping point in crypto's history. I think that what Saylor has done in MicroStrategy and what the Circle IPO proved this year is that there's an explosion of latent demand for crypto equities, equities that have some kind of crypto adjacency, right? Even in Robinhood, for example. And institutional appetite has been pent up for a while because of an unclear regulatory environment. And I'm here from the SALT conference in Wyoming, where the chairman of the SEC will be speaking alongside Cynthia Lummis and many other members of Congress who are part of the pro-crypto administration and pro-crypto Congress that are really pioneering a new future for our industry. And I think it's incredible how all of these different things are coming together. I think in regard to institutions, many are getting up the curve in terms of custody and security for how to actually own the underlying assets, but not every institution's there yet. And it requires, personnel, human capital, insurance, and policy change to actually purchase spot assets. And so what DATs offer investors is a safe and compliant equity wrapper to access the explosive growth of a new network like Sui. I think that, as you can see in some of the high-profile names that are coming into the DAT space, it's multi-strat hedge funds. It's even the likes of Fidelity and others are coming in now to these DATs. The investor base is transforming right before our eyes, and I think the U.S. capital markets are so unique. The liquidity there is not like anything we've ever seen in crypto. And you can definitely create generational companies like what Michael Saylor has achieved with MicroStrategy. He's done such a great job at educating Wall Street on the compounding effects of Bitcoin. And now we have access to these next generation technologies in the form of Sui, that, as I say, came from Facebook, where probably could have been the biggest business in crypto in the world, and are now being able to flourish in an unrestricted way through Sui, through the Sui ecosystem. So many investors are very interested in the technology progress of this sector. Many investors and analysts think about the growth of the internet in the 2000s and how it created companies like Facebook and Google. And I think for us as investors, and for many of the investors who joined our pipe round, who were disclosed in our press release, they see this as the opportunity to get access to one of the most important generational companies in crypto. And then you also back a management team to deliver a dynamic strategy. So, our job is to accumulate Sui in the market in a dynamic strategy that drives return for our shareholders. Second, we will provide economic security to the network in the form of staking and potentially also running our own validator. We'll return that yield back to investors in the form of Sui per share. And then in the medium term, we actually want to be a really important actor in the Sui ecosystem. We, as I mentioned, at Caratage have been one of the most prolific investors in this ecosystem. We think that it's an incredible community, and we want to drive not just economic security, but the growth, the value of Sui, and we want to drive that community. So we think our balance sheet can play a very interesting role in providing liquidity into growing Sui DeFi and other aspects of the Sui ecosystem. And then we will provide that return back to shareholders in the form of Sui per share. So it's all about driving a dynamic return, being value accretive in the form of Sui per share, and having a competitive strategy that's most importantly backed by the Sui Foundation. And we brought this to market in partnership with SUI. We were both the lead investors, and we did something that was disproportionate in the DAT space. We locked our shares for 12 months to prove to our shareholders and to the SUI community that we are long-term focused. This is not opportunism. It's not a trade. We're here to build the SUI ecosystem long-term and drive the value of SUI.
Yeah, I want to dig into that because that all it makes sense. Why you guys are different and what you're doing specifically within the SUI ecosystem. You spoke about projects like Walrus. You spoke about projects like SUI Lend. I'm big on SUI Lend and was in Walrus. I'm just wondering, are there anything other projects that come to top of mind that you'd be looking to back as one of the main, funds for SUI? So is there anything like crypto AI you mentioned before, just anything that is on the horizon for the SUI ecosystem that you would either like to see or that you could potentially, back?
Yeah, so I think the most important answer that I would say is that Bitcoin on SUI is driving a lot of investor appetite right now. We think that the opportunity to have Bitcoin natively on SUI at real scale in the next few years is going to be extremely exciting. I think, a small percentage of all Bitcoin is wrapped. Institutions, individuals don't want to take bridging risk. They don't want to take synthetic risk on their Bitcoin. We're seeing very interesting innovations coming from both the external SUI ecosystem, like ICA, which was announced recently, that has kind of come up with some very novel 2PC, MPC technology, which allows for kind of, a much more secure way to get financing on your Bitcoin without bridging it. Similarly, there are some very interesting initiatives coming out of the SUI team and the Miston team itself related to BTC-Fi on SUI in the next couple of months. And I think that's going to be a very exciting part of the growth story. In our investor docs, we actually have the ability to custody both SUI and Bitcoin. And we expect to play a really interesting role in the growth of Bitcoin yield on SUI in the future.
And Stephen, what is the reason for that, where you're seeing demand for Bitcoin on SUI? Is it that it's used as collateral to finance participation or other operations in some way? Or where does that demand come from?
I think that yield on Bitcoin is kind of like the holy grail, right? Everyone has been, accustomed to the compounding value of owning Bitcoin and not selling it. But ultimately, it's a very important asset to get liquidity against and to get, to mint stablecoins against. And I think the growth of BTC-Fi could be transformational for crypto. You need a way to handle those assets in a secure and safe way that minimizes bridging risk. I think that the unique qualities of the Move programming language, this ability to have objects at the core of the data model rather than accounts, allows for very unique programmability opportunities. And similarly, coming out of Miston Labs, as I mentioned, kind of Kostas before, the chief cryptographer, not only are they researching kind of tracks related to post-quantum security, they're also looking at areas related to AI and to Bitcoin. And I think what will come out in the next couple of months is going to be very, very exciting. I think, stay tuned to Twitter and to Korea Blockchain Week and other events where SUI is going to be present to follow that. But I think that, the overall growth of liquidity that could bring to the whole of crypto and not least the SUI ecosystem could be gigantic.
Where do you see this going long term? I mean, obviously you guys are in it for the long term, given the lockup period, and again, very sizable investment here relative to even the market cap of SUI today, which I think is probably close to 12 billion, maybe a little bit more at the current prices. For anybody that's not in the space or isn't even familiar with SUI, how do you think about it? Is this something that I suppose could reach the market cap over time, assuming this all goes up, of something like Solana today, where you have a roughly $100 billion market cap? And maybe I'm kind of just grasping here, but how do you guys think about valuations long-term in this space? We've got maybe 3 to 4 trillion. I don't know what the exact number is in terms of total crypto market cap today. But as this plays out, 5+ years, and where do you see this going?
I think that we are witnessing an exponential growth of crypto right now. The network effects are truly starting to kind of hit that J-curve, and one blockchain stands out amongst the rest for enabling these billion user type experiences, and that's Siri, right? It's 2 and a bit years old on mainnet. It reached an all-time high of FTV around 50 billion. Solana's 5 years old and has done extremely well, but do I think Sui could outperform Solana within the next year? Definitely. Do I think that Sui could outperform Ethereum in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years? Definitely, because once you've landed the breakout use cases, the types of experiences that have transformed Web2, the TikToks, the YouTubes, the gaming experiences, once they land on Sui, I think we're set for a very different future. And as I mentioned, if you really think about, agentic experiences, what does that mean? It means AI wallets that can think and act for you. It means like going from an LLM query to an action somewhere in an IT real estate or on a blockchain, right? Like that type of coordination layer is going to be handling billions, if not trillions of dollars of events. I remember back in my previous life when we used to kind of convert unstructured communications data into structured data, and we'd emit those kind of those conversions into structured data via a JSON format in the API, and then that would be fed into a Kafka stream, which could be enabled in the broader IT real estate, whether it was Murex or Salesforce or ServiceNow, to take action on those events. ChatGPT's drawing upon, I think, like 700 million weekly active users. Just imagine the load that would be required if every one of those users emitted a request at the same time, or 10 requests in the same minute. What blockchain can handle that scale? And I think the answer is Siri, right? So in the future, I think the growth of the ecosystem could be incredible, and I think that we are underwriting the exponential growth of Sui in this public company. That's definitely the investment thesis.
Makes sense, yeah. And just real quick, we got a couple minutes left. I'm just curious, like, where do you think the crypto treasury market is going from here? And then specifically, what's top of mind for you at Mill City Ventures? How are you going to manage the Sui treasury, and what's kind of top of mind there for you?
I think the DAT space is a really interesting phenomenon. I think it's unlocking U.S. capital markets liquidity in a really profound and meaningful way that could create generational companies like we've seen with Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. I think that it could also change the commercial destiny of many of these protocols. In us at Mill City Ventures, we have an executive team that's highly commercial. We've got a great asset manager at Galaxy. And we are mandated to drive investor and shareholder return. And we also have an operating company, remember, inside the business, which is a non-bank financial lender. And so we see the role that we will play in the public markets as driving the value of Sui, driving the vision of Sui, but driving operating return and shareholder return, right, in our stock. And we are, I think, enabled to do things in the market that a foundation can't do, doesn't want to be seen to be doing. And that commercial mandate is limitless. I think, in many ways, what we could become longer term is kind of like a quasi-Sui bank. Build a large balance sheet, provide return on that balance sheet, use that balance sheet to provide liquidity and lending into different pools. And I think there are tons of industries that haven't flourished yet really on blockchain rails. One is SME credit, one is kind of like fintech, another one is AI. So we can go into those industries, look for targets, look for companies that have hundreds of millions of users, hundreds of millions of dollars of cash flow, and look to potentially acquire them or bring them over to Sui in some way. There's a really limitless future of opportunities that we can pursue. But I think what will stand out from the competitive bench is, are you coming to market with a foundation? We looked at the DAT space at the beginning of the year as investors at Caratage. We DD'd pretty much every company, and what was missing for us was a DAT strategy that had come to market in direct partnership with a foundation. And what would that mean? Like, what would that mean if you had an exclusive right to purchase tokens from the foundation at a discount you negotiated for your shareholders. What would that mean if you could like join in media and marketing initiatives with the actual founders of the technology themselves? What does it mean when you're directionally aligned for the next decade? And how can you leverage each other's expertise and not just provide, as I said, economic security to the network, but commercial growth longer term for this ecosystem? That's a really exciting future, and we do it in maximum respect for the founders of this technology. We aspire to be great custodians of their brand in the public markets, and we really aim to try and grow the value of this ecosystem, the value of this token, and the value of our stock for our shareholders. So I think it's a united vision with the founders, and it's all based on success.
Well, Stephen, we're super excited to see what's next for Mill City Ventures. Again, ticker symbol is MCVT for anybody that wants to check it out. But thank you for coming on the show. Before we let you go, where can everyone learn a little bit more about Mill City Ventures, or even follow you if you're on Twitter, learn more about you? Where can they go?
Yeah, so please follow me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and please go to our website and to our Twitter page. We'll be publishing all of our SUI holdings and how we've acquired that SUI dynamically in the market every week. We aim to be super transparent, so all of our investors and our kind of community members can follow our journey and be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, and thanks again for coming on the show this evening.
You're welcome. Thank
all
you
right.
all.
That's going to do it for our show. We'll be back on Wednesday. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Dan.
Peace.